All right, guys, moment of truth. Let's get the form stripped off, rinse off the excess colorant, and see how we did. All right, so I'm actually pretty happy with how this came out. Front edge looks decent enough here that we're gonna backfill with topsoil and bring the grass right up to the edge of the concrete pad here. The impressions that we made with that stamper came out pretty good. We got a nice texture on there. The only thing I'm a little bit disappointed with is the concrete colorant powder that we used didn't really seem to adhere to the concrete too much. We left this overnight and I thought I'd be good to just come out here and rinse it this morning. But as you can see, if I take my finger and just wipe any of the stuff that's still left on here, you can see the color that was actually supposed to be was, I think it was pecan brown or something like that. And we kind of wanted it to be like a brown sandstone color to tie in with the sandstone we have up there. So I'll have to do some more research here before we start pouring any more pads on how to get that colorant to kind of absorb into the concrete a little more. I don't know if maybe the mix was a little bit too dry when we put it on there and stamped it, or if maybe after we pour the colorant on and get the stamper out, maybe I just need to do a real light mist to get it to kind of drop down into that concrete a little bit more. Either way, it's not going to be a huge deal because this, like I said, is just a footer pad. The actual stairs that we're going to use the broken stone edge form on, those are all going to be up there. So if this is just a concrete color and then all the stairs are the color we're looking for, it won't look too weird. But I definitely want to make sure I get it figured out before we pour the first step. All right, so this is our chiseled edge stone stair form, and I'm going to go ahead and add some of our colorant to it. And it also double acts as a release agent, so that way the concrete doesn't stick to it. The reason I think this stuff didn't color as much as I wanted to last time is I think my mix was a little too dry. So we're going to get that figured out, get a nice consistent wet mix. Obviously you don't want it to be too wet because the more water you add to it, the weaker the concrete gets, but it still needs to be workable. And more importantly for us, it needs to be able to accept this color. So we're going to get this dusted here. That way the concrete will release from it and we'll have color on the front as well as the top. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now, in the last video, a lot of people asked, if we're building this one step at a time, and this step is going to go on top of existing concrete, how are we going to stake it down? Well, the answer is we're not. I've got cinder blocks here we're going to use to prop this up so that it's well supported and hopefully will not cave out while we're pouring. And because I know this pad here is level because we formed it that way, this form should also be level. And then at this point it's just a matter of tweaking it to get the curve that we like and the profile that we want for this stair, and making sure that it kind of lines up with the sweep on the front edge of this. And then I've got two more blocks here to make sure that we have plenty of reinforcement behind this form. Another thing we're going to try out here that may be a little bit unorthodox, and I'm sure people are going to chew me up in the comments for, is instead of using rebar, we are going to repurpose the cutouts of our IBC totes and see how that works. But they actually fit in here perfect. They stay raised up off the ground, and they should provide pretty good strength. And you know, one thing you may be concerned about is, you know, they may rot out faster than rebar would, but honestly these are still going to last longer than I'll be alive. So I think with that said, we've got our face on here, it's powdered with release agent. We've got our back form on here, and the only reason we really needed that was to give us a line to screed off of, and we set that as level. Well, we actually set this about a ½ an inch higher, that way any rainwater will shed off the front here. So we're ready to go ahead and get started mixing and throwing some concrete down in here. All right, so if you guys caught in the last video, we hand mixed 13 bags, and to everybody's suggestion said go out and get a Harbor Freight mixer, and I did. And Harbor Freight has two different mixers. They have a cheaper central machinery one, and then they have a little bit more expensive one in this Bauer. And looking at the two of them side by side, I wanted this one for a couple of reasons. One, the wheels are a lot heavier duty for moving around, and after reading some reviews on the central machinery one, that seemed to be a weak point. Two, this one has a plastic drum. On the steel drum one, that's a little bit cheaper. Some people said that the powder coating or the paint on the inside as you're mixing your first couple bags will peel off, and you'll actually see it in the finished product of your cement. This one also has 3 paddles on the inside. I know it's sunny back here and dark in here so you can't see, but this one has 3 paddles on the inside. The central machinery one only had 2 paddles. The dumping mechanism on this one seems a little bit better. Just looking at them side by side, this one seemed much better built. It's got a 3/4 horsepower motor on it instead of a 1/2 horsepower. So yeah, we'll see how this thing works. And one thing with hand mixing versus using this, it took me about 6 to 7 minutes to hand mix 2 bags. And I think this is going to be a lot faster. It's going to do a better job of mixing better, because when I was mixing in the bucket, I think I still had some spots that were really, really wet and some dry powder still left in the bottom of the bucket, whereas this should take care of that and mix it all up really well. So it's going to save us some time, save us some labor, and hopefully do a better job. So to get started here, we're going to go ahead and figure out exactly what this mix needs to be per 1 bag. So we're just going to do a test bag, and the bag calls for 3 quarts of water, or 3 liters, but 1.25 liters, pretty much the same thing. So on the side of this bucket, we've got measurements there. So we're going to start with 3 quarts and see what that looks like. I know when I was hand mixing it, it came out pretty dry, so I added more water to it, but I think again that was because mixing it was a lot harder by hand. If I put 3 liters in the cement mixer there, I think it should come out okay. But we're going to go ahead and figure out what we need, and then we should be able to start mixing 2 bags at a time once we figure out what our water to concrete mix ratio needs to be. All right, so we're starting off with our 3 quarts of water, and then we're going to grab 1 bag. So you guys just saw that I was able to mix a bag of concrete in 21 seconds with the new mixer, and I just wanted to show you in comparison to what I was doing yesterday mixing it by hand and how long that took and how much time this is actually going to save us. All right, so that didn't take very long at all. We're gonna go ahead and throw the second bag in with the same amount of water. That consistency actually looked pretty good. So that's definitely the difference between hand mixing and using a mixer. It just does a much better job. So we're gonna throw in another 3 quarts and another bag and see how this does with 2 bags of concrete. I'm actually gonna shoot that back in just a little bit before I turn it on. Okay, 280-pound bags.
Yeah, it looks dry.
You think?
Yeah. That should be like...
All right, so
It goes from
Dry to wet.
yeah, I mean, just instantly.
You can tell already.
yeah, that was just one additional quart.
Now it looks
Is that good there? Well, that is certainly easier than what I did the other day mixing in the bucket of the excavator, but it's got a nice consistency to it now. You can see it curling over with the paddles. We're gonna go ahead and dump it in the excavator bucket and start pouring. That looks so much better than the stuff I was making the other day. That actually almost looks like ready mix. It's a little low right there. Fucking YouTube, right? I do like that color. So right here, we're using the vibration from the Sawzall without a blade in it to try to bring some of that slurry to the front of the form. So that way, when we peel it back, it'll have a nice smooth finish and no voids or air bubbles or exposed aggregate on the front edge where it's supposed to be a chiseled rock front. All right, so the second step is now done. As you can see, this first one here, we didn't get enough vibration on this step early enough to get rid of all of the air bubbles and the exposed aggregate to get that slurry on the front edge of that form. So hopefully this next one, we really paid attention to that and made sure to get the Sawzall on there right after we were finished screeding it off. So let's get this uncovered and see if we're learning from our mistakes as we go up each step. Oh yeah, huge difference. That's what's cool about doing a project like this one step at a time, is it allows you to learn from your mistakes. If you would try to do all 10 steps at one time, that mistake right there would be in every single step going up. But doing it this way, I can learn from that, and that mistake is then isolated to just that step, and we can still fix it. And every step thereafter, we've learned from our mistake, and we only have one step to fix instead of 10. Speaking of fixing this, I think what we're going to do is get some quick setting cement that's kind of like a mortar or a cement patch. There's no granule aggregate in it. It's just a smooth paste that you basically just trowel on there and make it as smooth as you can. It should set in 5 to 10 minutes. It's going to be a different color than our colored stone that we did there, so we'll just splatter on some of that colorant and should be good to go. Speaking of color, I think I may have spoken a little too soon at the beginning of this video when I said I wasn't sure that the color was sticking to the concrete. I think when I just gave it a quick hose off rinse, it didn't remove all of that, you know, non-watered or non-wet colorant that is kind of gray in color. As soon as we started stepping on this and kind of wearing off some more of the leftover material, you could start to see that color show through. I think they recommend either pressure washing it, you know, a couple days after, or just getting a broom and a hose and rinsing it off. So that's what I'm going to do right now, because it is still fresh concrete. I don't want to get out here with a 3400 psi pressure washer and start blowing this apart. I think it would be okay, but I just don't want to take that risk. So let's see if we can't get this cleaned off and see what that true color is going to be underneath. Well, that solves that mystery. Our concrete is sufficiently colored the pecan brown that we were going for. As you can see, it's going to tie in nicely with the earthly tones we have going between the boulders from back in the woods, the sandstone, and now this pecan brown steps that we have that are going to be made to look like a chiseled stone front there. We will be applying a sealer once we get all of the steps done. It just doesn't make sense to seal one step at a time. So we're going to get all of the steps done, and then we'll seal it. Speaking of finishing the rest of the steps, that Harbor Freight Bauer mixer up there has already paid for itself, in my opinion. Just the amount of labor that it saved in doing these two steps versus this one. We're definitely using more concrete than I thought. We used 13 on this first step, and I kind of figured that each step thereafter would only use about 6 to 8 bags of concrete. However, this is only 4 inches thick. These are 7-inch steps, so there's 7 inches of concrete there. So we're still using about 13 bags per step. So we've put down 39 bags of concrete. 13 I mixed by hand, 26 I used with the mixer. And as I said earlier in the video, I think it takes about 20 seconds to mix a bag in the cement mixer versus about 4 minutes to do it by hand with a shovel. And not only the time savings, but the labor savings as well. I was absolutely gassed after hand mixing these 13 bags, but after doing these 13 and these 13, it, like I said, definitely just paid for itself. I still have energy after I'm done doing these steps. Actually, I think I spent probably 7 or 8 hours doing this one here, and then the next couple I was done by 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, all because of the cement mixer up there. Now, as far as how well it actually mixes the concrete, if you're just doing one bag at a time, it does a phenomenal job. And there is room in there to do 2 bags, 2 80-pound bags at one time. The one thing I will say is when you start putting 2 bags in at one time, it's almost like there's not enough airspace in there to allow the concrete to move around and mix and roll and turn. And it does mix, I would say, 80 to 90% of the concrete, but what we noticed is when you have 2 bags in there, you'll end up getting some dry pockets on the very back of the drum. And so all you have to do is just turn the mixer off, grab a shovel, reach in there, knock all that back caking off of the wall, and then turn it back on again. So it's not a big deal. And that's what we were doing, was we were mixing 2 bags at a time, throwing it in the excavator bucket and bringing it down here. So even though you still got to pick up the shovel and pull some off the back wall, we still found it was faster to do that than try to do it 1 bag at a time. Anyways, guys, that is 2 steps complete plus the footer pad. Not a bad way to look at it. Like I said, if you're doing it 1 step at a time, not too intimidating. Speaking of 8 steps left to go, we're going to have 10 steps total plus the footer pad. If you're curious how much material we're going to use, like I said, we're averaging about 13 bags per step. 13 times 11 is 143 bags of concrete. So that mixer up there is definitely going to get its workout in. But in terms of the actual cost of materials, 143 times about $5 a bag is what we're paying from Home Depot. Works out to a little bit over $700 worth of concrete here to get these beautiful steps that we're going to have. So I think it's absolutely worth putting in some sweat equity into something like this. And you know, I was nervous about screwing it up when we first started, but like I said earlier, if you screw up 1 step, just focus on how are you going to fix it and make sure you don't make those same mistakes in the later steps going up the hill. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, give me a big thumbs up, click that subscribe button, and and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.